Once upon a time, in a small and peaceful kingdom, there lived a gentle king who was loved by his people because he carried their sorrows like his own. He was the kind of man who would step into the rain if it meant keeping someone else dry. But peace never lasts forever. In the neighboring land, a cruel king grew jealous. Greedy for more, he whispered to himself, "That little kingdom should also be mine." And soon enough, war swept over the quiet land like a storm. The kind king fought bravely, but his army was no match. He fell in battle, and the small kingdom was lost. His queen, Alara, and their tiny daughter, Aveline, were dragged into prison. The prison was dark, damp, and heavy with silence. Their meals were nothing more than a hard piece of bread slipped through the bars. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into years. Aveline grew taller, her innocence shadowed by the gray walls around her, though her mother's embrace kept her spirit alive. And then, one day, something strange happened. Through a narrow crack in the prison wall, a white cat slipped inside. Alara blinked in surprise, then broke her bread and pushed a piece toward the little creature. Aveline smiled for the first time in days. The next day, the cat returned. And the day after that. Soon, it became part of their life, a soft presence in the middle of their sorrow. One evening, the cat carried silk threads in its mouth, thin and shining. Alara kept them safe. Slowly, carefully, she began weaving a rope out of them, as if each thread carried hope inside it. The cat was no longer just an animal to them. It became a companion, a comfort, almost like family. Until one night, the cell filled with light. The white cat shimmered and changed. And before their astonished eyes, a fairy stood in its place, glowing like dawn breaking inside the dark. Her name was Seraphiel. The fairy spoke gently, "I was testing your hearts. You have endured enough. Now your daughter must be freed. Tie her to the rope. Lower her down. I will take her to safety." Alara's heart broke, torn between fear and hope. She hugged her daughter tightly, kissed her forehead, and with trembling hands began lowering her down. But the prison walls were tall, and the girl had only made it halfway when a shadow swept across the night. A witch appeared, cruel and swift. With a shriek, she seized Aveline and vanished into the darkness. Seraphiel waited below, her arms ready, but the girl never came. Alarmed, she rose back to the prison. Alara cried, I lowered her down, and she disappeared. The fairy's eyes turned grave. The witch has taken her. I will find her, she promised, her voice steady but urgent. But before she could leave, soldiers stormed the cell. They had come to fetch the Princess Aveline, to force her into marriage with the cruel king's ugly son. When they found her gone, their rage fell upon Alara. They dragged her to the palace, beat her, and the king roared, "Hang her at once." Yet, just as the noose was being prepared, Seraphiel returned. Her magic spread like a storm. Soldiers collapsed, the palace dimmed into silence, and she carried Alara away to safety. Then, without pause, she left again, determined to find the stolen princess. Months passed. 7, 8 long months of searching. At last, Seraphiel reached a cave hidden deep in the wilderness. Its mouth was covered in webs, and a bird perched nearby. She asked, "Have you seen a princess?" The bird tilted its head. "Yes, she is deep inside. But beware, the front path will trap you. Go from the back." The fairy followed the long, twisted way until she reached the cave's end. There, she found Aveline bruised and frightened, held captive by the cruel king's son. He knew dark magic. He had struck her and now snarled, "Marry me, or I will end your life." When Seraphiel stepped forward, he turned his powers against her. But she was stronger. With one fierce surge of light, she broke his spells and shrank him into a rat. Squealing, he vanished into the cracks of the earth. The fairy led Aveline out, and at last, after years, she returned her to her mother. Their reunion was like the breaking of a storm. They fell into each other's arms and wept. But this time, their tears tasted of joy. Life slowly settled into peace again. Mother and daughter lived in quiet safety, Seraphiel watching over them from afar. Seasons passed, and Aveline blossomed into a young woman graceful, thoughtful, her heart softened by all she had endured. And then, one day, fate brought someone new into their lives. A prince from a nearby land, Elian, rode past while hunting in the forest. He was strong, yet his strength was softened by kindness. When he first laid eyes on Aveline, he paused. There was something about her, not only her beauty, but the quiet strength in her face, the gentleness in her eyes. His heart stirred. Aveline, too, felt something. Elian's voice, his manner, the way he spoke with warmth reminded her of her father. She saw in him not just a prince, but a kind soul, the sort of man who carried the weight of others with compassion. Their meetings grew, one after another, like chapters written by destiny itself. Affection blossomed, first as respect, then as love. In time, they were married. The wedding wasn't extravagant, but it was filled with laughter, music, and tears of happiness. Aveline, once a child who lived in the shadows of a prison, now stood beside her husband, crowned as queen of a land that was safe and loving. And through it all, she never forgot her mother's sacrifices, nor the gentle white cat, who was, in truth, a fairy and the quiet thread of hope that had carried her from darkness to light. Maybe Aveline's story was never meant to be simple. Maybe it was meant to show how pain can still grow something beautiful.